Stella sat in the dimly lit apartment, her face buried in her hands. Tears soaked her palms, but she didn't bother wiping them away. The room was silent, except for the occasional drip of water from the leaking kitchen tap. The walls, once bright and beautiful, were now dull and cracked. The air smelled of poverty, stale and empty, just like her life. She used to live in a grand mansion with sparkling chandeliers and golden staircases. The floors were always polished, the dining table never empty, and her wardrobe filled with designer clothes. Her daughters, Amanda, Vera, and Jane, once lived like princesses, wearing the finest dresses, riding in the best cars, and eating the best meals. But all of that was gone. Her husband, David, had been the pillar of their wealth. A strong, successful businessman who made sure his family lacked nothing. Then 2 years ago, death knocked on their door and took him away. Everything crumbled after that. She still remembered the day the bank officials came. She had woken up to a loud knock on the door. When she opened it, men in suits stood in front of her, holding papers she could barely understand. "Madam, this property has been seized due to an outstanding loan," one of them had said, his voice emotionless. Stella had laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. "What do you mean seized? This is my house." The man shook his head. "Your husband owed the bank a huge sum of money. He used this house, his cars, and several of his businesses as collateral. Since he's no longer alive and there's no repayment, we have no choice but to take everything." She had screamed, pleaded, even fell to her knees, but nothing changed. Within a week, she and her daughters were thrown out of the mansion like beggars. Their cars were taken. Their jewelry, furniture, and even the expensive paintings on the wall, all gone. She had managed to sell a few things under her name, just enough to rent a small apartment in a rough part of the city. It wasn't much, but at least they had a roof over their heads. However, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't adjust to this life. The poverty suffocated her. The worst part was that people who used to bow to her in respect now pretended not to see her. The rich women who once called her their friend now whispered about her misfortune behind her back. Even her daughters were struggling. Jane, the eldest at 25, tried to find a job, but with no work experience, it was impossible. Vera, 23, managed to get a job as a waitress, but the pay was barely enough to cover their food. And Amanda, the youngest at 21, had dropped out of school because they couldn't afford the fees anymore. Stella couldn't take it. She had tasted wealth, and now that it was gone, she felt like she was dying every day. One evening, as they sat in the tiny living room eating plain rice with no meat, Stella slammed her plate down in frustration. "I refuse to live like this," she snapped, her voice shaking with anger. Her daughters looked at her with tired eyes. They had heard this same complaint over and over again. "Mom, what do you want us to do?" Jane sighed. Stella's eyes burned with determination. "We cannot continue like this. Do you know who we used to be? We were among the wealthiest families in this city. We sat in VIP sections, we traveled first class, we had drivers and maids. Look at us now, eating plain rice like beggars." Vera shifted uncomfortably. "But Mum, things have changed. Dad is gone and so is the money. We just have to work hard and—" "Work hard?" Stella scoffed. "Let me ask you, Vera, how much do you make in that restaurant?" Vera lowered her head. "Not enough," she mumbled. "Exactly." Stella stood up. "I am not going to sit here and watch my daughters suffer like this. There is a way out of this. And I am going to find it." She stormed into her tiny bedroom and shut the door, leaving her daughters in silence. That night she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking of a way to escape this miserable life. Then, the next morning something happened. As she walked to the market to buy food, she overheard two women talking in hushed voices. "Have you heard about that girl, Grace?" one of them said. "What about her?" the other asked. "She was just like us, poor, struggling. But one day, a rich man picked her up by the roadside, fell in love with her, and now she's living in a mansion, driving the latest cars." The second woman gasped. "Are you serious?" "Yes. She changed her whole family's life. Her mother doesn't even go to the market anymore. She has maids doing everything for her. Stella stopped in her tracks. Her heart pounded in her chest. A poor girl picked up by a rich man, and now she was wealthy. An idea started forming in her mind. She hurried back home, her excitement growing. As soon as she entered the apartment, she called her daughters to sit down. "What is it, Mum?" Jane asked, frowning. "I have found a solution to our problems," Stella announced. Amanda raised an eyebrow. "What solution?" Stella leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I heard a story today. A young girl just like you three used to be poor. But one day she stood by the roadside, and a rich man picked her up. He fell in love with her, and now she's living the life of a queen." Her daughters exchanged confused glances. Vera's eyes narrowed. "Mom, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Stella smiled. "Yes, my dear. You three will go out and stand in rich neighborhoods. You will wait until wealthy men notice you. And when they do, you will charm them, capture their hearts, and make them take care of you." Jane's mouth dropped open. "Mum, you want us to sell ourselves?" Stella rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. I'm simply asking you to use your beauty wisely. Do you know how many rich men are out there, looking for beautiful girls? You will be doing nothing wrong." Amanda shook her head. "This is insane." "No, what is insane is us continuing to live in poverty when we have a way out." Stella snapped. "Do you think suffering is better than luxury? Look at me. Look at us. We are not meant for this kind of life." Jane stood up. "Mom, I don't know about Amanda and Vera, but I'm not doing this." She walked away, slamming the door to her room. Vera sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Mum, this sounds dangerous." Stella softened her voice. "My dear, danger is living like this. Don't you want a better life? You are beautiful girls. You deserve to live in mansions, not in this hole." Amanda hesitated. "And if we refuse?" Stella's face hardened. "Then you can forget about me taking care of you. I have suffered enough. If you want to stay poor, that's your choice." The room fell silent. Stella paced around the tiny living room. Her eyes filled with a dangerous kind of determination. She had given her daughters a night to think about her plan, but she wasn't going to wait forever. She turned to face them as they sat silently on the worn-out couch. Jane had refused to come out of her room, but Amanda and Vera sat there, looking uncertain. "I hope you two have come to your senses," Stella said, folding her arms. Vera hesitated, avoiding her mother's sharp gaze. "Mum, this doesn't feel right." Stella let out a bitter laugh. "And does eating plain rice every night feel right? Does struggling to pay rent feel right? Do you enjoy watching your mother, a woman who was once respected, now reduced to begging old friends for favors?" Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "But Mum, standing on the roadside, waiting for rich men. That sounds like a smart plan." Stella interrupted. "Listen to me, both of you. This is not about shame or fear. It is about survival. You are beautiful girls. Rich men like beautiful girls. Why should other girls be lucky while you sit here in poverty?" She sat down, lowering her voice. "I am not telling you to do anything bad. Just go to places where rich men pass. Look elegant. Look classy. And when one picks you up, don't just think of the money he gives you. Think long-term. Make him fall for you. Become his queen." Vera still looked unsure, but Amanda, the youngest, seemed to be thinking. Stella noticed and quickly added, "Amanda, don't you want to travel again? Don't you want to eat in the best restaurants, wear expensive clothes? Do you remember how it felt to have everything?" Amanda swallowed hard. She did remember. The fancy hotels, the weekend shopping sprees, the endless luxuries. Stella leaned forward. "That life is still possible, my dear. But only if you are willing to fight for it." There was a long silence. Then finally Amanda nodded. Vera sighed, rubbing her temples. "Mum, what if something goes wrong?" Stella smiled, her victory sealed. "Nothing will go wrong, my dear. You just have to be smart. At that moment, Jane's door swung open and she stepped out, her face tight with anger. So that's it then. You have convinced them to destroy their lives. Stella rolled her eyes. Jane, you are too dramatic. No one is destroying anything. I am securing a future for this family. Jane shook her head. Count me out. Then leave, Stella snapped. I will not force you. But don't come crying to me when your sisters are driving expensive cars, and you are still trekking in the sun. Jane's fists clenched. She gave one last disappointed look at Amanda and Vera before turning and walking out of the apartment. Stella barely noticed. She had already won the real battle. Now it was time for action. The next morning, Stella woke up before dawn. She spent hours preparing Amanda and Vera, making sure they looked perfect. She picked out the best dresses they had left, tight enough to attract attention but not too revealing. She fixed their hair, applied light makeup, and gave them strict instructions. Listen carefully, she said. I have chosen 3 locations where rich men pass daily. Vera, you will stand near Grand Avenue Hotel. Many wealthy businessmen stay there. Amanda, you will go to King's Estate Gate. Rich men drive in and out of that place all day. Amanda nodded, her heart pounding. Stella continued. Do not return home until you are picked up by a wealthy man. And remember, first impressions matter. Be confident. Be polite. Look expensive, even if you are not. Vera swallowed hard. And if no one picks us? Stella's eyes darkened. Then try again tomorrow. And the next day. Until you succeed. Amanda took a deep breath, adjusting her dress. Vera hesitated for a moment but then sighed and nodded. It was time. The sun was setting when Amanda and Vera reached their separate locations. Amanda stood near King's Estate Gate, pretending to be waiting for someone. She watched as expensive cars rolled past, the drivers barely glancing at her. Her stomach twisted with nervousness. Was this a mistake? Then suddenly, a black Range Rover slowed down beside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a well-dressed man in his mid-40s. He had sharp eyes and a confident smile. Hello, beautiful, he said smoothly. Waiting for someone. Amanda's heart pounded. She forced a smile. Not exactly. The man chuckled. Good. 'Cause I think you should be waiting for me. Hop in. Amanda hesitated for only a second before sliding into the car. She had done it. Meanwhile, Vera stood outside Grand Avenue Hotel, shifting nervously. She had seen 2 other girls nearby, also dressed well, also waiting. Competition. But she had something they didn't. Her mother's determination. After almost an hour, a sleek Mercedes-Benz pulled up. The driver, a handsome man in his early 50s, lowered his sunglasses and gave her a slow smile. You look lost, he said. Vera smiled back, remembering her mother's words. Maybe you can help me find my way. The man laughed. I like that. Get in. Vera took a deep breath and got in. She had done it too. That night, Stella sat in the living room, her legs shaking with impatience. Then, just before midnight, Vera and Amanda returned. Vera had a new designer bag. Amanda had cash. Both had smiles on their faces. Stella's eyes lit up. Tell me everything. They told her about the men, the expensive restaurants, the promises of shopping trips. Stella clapped her hands in delight. This is only the beginning, my daughters. Soon you will have your own cars, your own houses. You will no longer be girls waiting for luck. You will be the luck. Amanda and Vera, caught up in the excitement, laughed. The game had started, and they were winning. But none of them knew the danger that was creeping closer. For weeks, life changed in the David household. The small apartment that once felt like a prison was now filled with new clothes, expensive perfumes, and wads of cash. Stella walked around with a proud smile, wearing gold earrings she hadn't owned before. Vera and Amanda became regulars at 5-star hotels, rooftop restaurants, and yacht parties. Their men showered them with gifts, designer bags, jewelry, and money. Jane, who had moved out in anger, stopped calling. She wanted nothing to do with them anymore. Stella didn't care. She had won. But what she didn't realize was that when you play with fire, you eventually get burned. One afternoon, Amanda sat in her room, scrolling through her phone. She was waiting for a call from Richard, the wealthy man who had been spoiling her for weeks. But her stomach churned with unease. For the past few days, she had been feeling strange. Constant headaches, fever, and a deep exhaustion that wouldn't go away. She thought it was just stress. But when she looked in the mirror, her face looked pale. Her lips were dry. She felt wrong. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Vera peeked inside. "Hey, I'm going shopping. Want to come?" Amanda shook her head. "I don't feel too well." Vera frowned. "Again. Amanda, you've been sick for days. Maybe you should see a doctor." Amanda forced a smile. "I'll be fine." She didn't believe it. Later that night, Amanda's fever got worse. She tossed and turned in bed, sweating but shivering at the same time. Finally, she staggered to the kitchen for water. Stella was sitting at the dining table, counting money. She looked up. "What's wrong with you?" Amanda hesitated. "I think I need to go to the hospital." Stella's smile faded. "Hospital? What for?" "I just don't feel good." Stella frowned. "Amanda, listen to me. You cannot afford to start getting sick now. This is just the beginning of a good life for us. Maybe you need rest. Take some vitamins. But forget about hospitals. Those doctors will only put fear in your head." Amanda nodded weakly, but deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. A week later, Amanda collapsed. She had been standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, when her vision blurred. A wave of dizziness hit her like a storm, and she fell to the floor with a loud thud. Vera ran in and screamed. "Amanda!" She was burning up. Her body was hot to the touch, her lips cracked and bleeding. Her breathing was shallow. Vera panicked. "Mum! Something is wrong with Amanda." Stella rushed in. Her face turned pale when she saw her daughter's lifeless body on the floor. "We have to take her to the hospital," Vera cried. Stella hesitated. "Maybe we should wait." "Mum, look at her. Now." Stella swallowed her fear and nodded. They carried Amanda to a cab and rushed her to the nearest hospital. The hospital was cold and smelled like antiseptic. Amanda was wheeled into the emergency room while Stella and Vera waited outside. Minutes turned into hours. Finally, a doctor stepped out. He looked serious. "Are you her family?" "Yes," Stella said quickly. "Is she okay?" The doctor sighed. "We ran some tests. Her fever and weakness are symptoms of something serious." Stella's chest tightened. "What is it?" The doctor hesitated before saying, "Your daughter is HIV positive." Vera gasped. Stella staggered backward, her world spinning. "That's not possible," Stella whispered. The doctor's voice was firm. "She must have contracted it from someone. Do you know if she has been sexually active with multiple partners?" Stella couldn't speak. Vera covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "Oh my God!" The doctor continued. "HIV is no longer a death sentence, but she needs immediate treatment. Her immune system is already very weak." Stella finally found her voice. Can we do anything?" "Yes, but we need to act fast." Vera turned to her mother, her eyes filled with blame. "Mum, this is your fault." Stella's throat tightened. She had sent her daughters into this life. She had pushed them into the arms of rich men. And now Amanda was paying the price. Amanda stayed in the hospital for days. She barely spoke. She refused to eat. She looked smaller, weaker. Vera and Stella visited every day, but Amanda barely acknowledged them. One evening, as Stella sat beside her bed, Amanda finally spoke. Her voice was hollow. "Mum, am I going to die?" Stella's heart shattered. "No, my baby. We will get you treatment. You'll be fine." Amanda stared at the ceiling. "I wish I never listened to you." Stella flinched. Amanda turned her head slowly. "You ruined my life, Mum." Tears rolled down Stella's face, But Amanda had already turned away. She had nothing left to say. The air in the hospital room was thick with silence. Amanda lay on the bed, her body frail, her face emotionless. She no longer spoke to her mother, no longer reacted to her sister's attempts to cheer her up. She had given up. Vera sat by the window, staring at the darkening sky. She had barely slept for days. The truth was unbearable. Her little sister was dying, and their mother was the reason why. Stella sat beside Amanda, holding her cold hand. "Baby, please eat something," she whispered. Amanda didn't answer. Vera turned sharply. "Mom, stop acting like you care." Stella looked up, startled. "What?" "You heard me," Vera said coldly. "You did this to her. This is your fault." Stella's lips trembled. "I was only trying to help us survive." Vera let out a bitter laugh. "Survive? Mum, you sold your own daughters to rich men like we were products in a market. And now look at Amanda. She's dying." Stella flinched at the word. "Don't say that. She's not going to die." Amanda turned her head slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am." A heavy silence followed. Stella squeezed her daughter's hand tighter. "No, baby, you'll get better. We'll get you the best doctors. You'll—" "Mom, stop," Amanda cut her off. She turned weak, empty eyes toward her mother. "Just stop." Tears rolled down Stella's face. Vera stood up. "Do you know the worst part, Mum? You're not even crying because Amanda is sick. You're crying because you lost. Because this wasn't the fairy tale you thought it would be." Stella gasped. "That's not true. I love my daughters more than anything." "No, you love money more than anything," Vera snapped. "You love luxury, you love status, you love being the woman everyone admires. But you never loved us." Stella's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Amanda closed her eyes. "I wish I had never listened to you, Mum." Those words crushed Stella more than anything. Amanda's health worsened over the next few days. The doctors tried their best, but her body was too weak. Then, one cold evening, as Vera was refilling her water bottle, she heard the loud beeping sound of a machine. Nurses rushed in. Vera dropped the bottle, running toward Amanda's room. She reached the door just in time to see doctors surrounding the bed. Stella was screaming, holding Amanda's lifeless body. "No. No. Wake up, baby. Amanda, please wake up. Don't leave me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Vera's legs gave out beneath her. The doctor sighed. "She's gone." Stella let out an earth-shattering scream. Amanda was dead. The funeral was quiet. Jane returned for it, but she didn't speak to her mother. Stella stood beside the grave, her body shaking as they lowered Amanda into the earth. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had dreamed of riches, of success, of a life where her daughters would marry wealthy men and give her everything she lost. Instead, she was burying her youngest child. As the priest said the final prayer, Vera turned to Stella with empty eyes. "We're leaving." Stella blinked. "What?" "Jane and I. We're moving away." Panic gripped Stella's heart. "No, you can't." Vera stepped back. "We are done with you, Mum." Tears poured down Stella's face. "Please don't leave me. I lost Amanda. I can't lose you too." Jane, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "Mum, we lost Amanda because of you." Stella sobbed. "I was only trying to help." Vera shook her head. "No, Mum. You destroyed us." Then, without another word, Vera and Jane turned and walked away. Stella watched them go, her chest tightening with pain. For the first time in her life, she realized something terrifying. She had not only lost her wealth, she had lost everything. And she would die alone. Stella sat alone in the empty apartment, staring at the bare walls. The silence was unbearable. For years, she had dreamed of wealth and power. She had imagined herself living in luxury, surrounded by expensive things, admired by the rich and influential. But now, she had nothing. Her daughters were gone. Her youngest child was dead. And she was left to face the wreckage of her choices, alone. Days turned into weeks. Vera and Jane never returned. The once lively apartment that had been filled with designer bags, new clothes, and laughter was now a graveyard of memories. Stella tried to call them, but neither of them answered. She even went to Jane's workplace, hoping to see her. But the receptionist looked at her with cold eyes. "Miss Jane left the city, ma'am." "Left?" Stella's voice shook. "Where did she go?" The receptionist shrugged. "She didn't say." Stella turned away, her legs weak. They were really gone. Stella stopped going out. She barely ate. She barely slept. When she closed her eyes, she saw Amanda's pale, lifeless face. When she opened them, she saw the emptiness of her home. She thought about how her daughters used to sit together, how they used to eat and laugh. She remembered the nights they would sit in their grand mansion with their father, eating the finest meals and talking about the future. She had once been a mother. Now she was just a woman drowning in regret. The city had not forgotten Stella. She heard the whispers whenever she stepped outside. "That's the woman who forced her daughters into prostitution. She lost everything, and now she lost her children too. She is cursed." Their words burned her like fire. At first she wanted to scream at them, to tell them they didn't understand. But the truth was they were right. She had done this to herself. One afternoon, Stella sat by the window, staring at the street below. She barely noticed when someone knocked at her door. It was a gentle knock, hesitant. For a moment she thought she was imagining it. Then it came again. Slowly she stood up and walked to the door. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. It was Jane. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Stella burst into tears. "My child!" Jane's face was unreadable. She looked older, colder. "Mum," she said softly. Stella reached out, but Jane took a step back. "I didn't come here to stay," Jane said. "I only came to tell you something." Stella wiped her eyes. "Anything. Please tell me anything." Jane's voice was quiet but firm. "I forgive you." Stella gasped. "You do?" Jane nodded. "Yes, not because you deserve it, but because I need to be free from this pain." Stella fell to her knees. "My daughter. Please don't leave me. Please stay." Jane shook her head. "No, Mum. I will never stay. I came here to let go of the past, but I will never be part of your life again." Stella's body trembled. "Jane, please." But Jane turned and walked away. Stella watched her disappear down the street. And this time she knew. Jane was never coming back. That night, Stella sat in the darkness, staring at nothing. She thought about everything that had happened. She had once had a husband who loved her. She had once had 3 beautiful daughters. She had once lived in a grand mansion, surrounded by wealth. Now she had nothing. Not even hope. She had believed money was everything. She had believed wealth could solve all problems. But in the end, she had lost what truly mattered. And so, Stella David, the woman who had once lived in riches, the woman who had sent her daughters into the arms of powerful men, the woman who had dreamed of a fairy tale ending, sat alone in her empty apartment. And the city whispered her story, warning others never to make the same mistake. Because she was, and would forever be, the most unfortunate mother.